In 2024, it can be said that The Rock left no one indifferent. Some hated him because he came to take the spotlight from Cody Rhodes. Others were absolutely eager for him to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. But beyond all these stories, whether we realized it or not, he offered a collection of unforgettable moments. So make yourself comfortable, grab a coffee, and let's talk about it together.
You are on the Wrestling Paradise. My opinion on
The final boss. Here we go.
Into the swing, rock bottom.
Obviously, before anything else, it is important to understand where the final boss comes from, where this character was born. The behind the scenes of the emergence of this new, incredibly important character, and it's clear that there's a bit of controversy surrounding it. It grinds the teeth of some wrestling fans. But I want to clarify right from the start that our perspective today is that of fans. We are not here to discuss all the strategic and political aspects of WWE. When I say this, what I mean is that we are not here to say, in essence, whether what WWE did regarding The Rock, or what The Rock did as a person, as a human being, is good or bad in relation to Cody Rhodes. It's true that this has caused some frustration, but that's not our purpose today. So why are we here? To see how much you will have understood. For me, it's a real crush. This character of the final boss has been amazing during the road to WrestleMania 40. First of all, where does this character come from? We need to understand well what we are talking about. First of all, and this is where the controversy comes from, but purely the final boss, how was he born? So we remember. Initially, The Rock joined the board of directors of TKO, which is the major company above WWE, in early 2024, and thus obtained a position and, let's say, a very important responsibility at WWE. And basically, we were starting, so it should be noted that we learned this, of course, through the news, but also thanks to the brilliant documentary released in the meantime, Behind the Curtain, the behind the scenes of WrestleMania 40. We learned that initially, the first plan for the main event of WrestleMania, which is the most important match of the year, was Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes 2, knowing that it had already taken place at WrestleMania 39, that Cody Rhodes had therefore lost, and that his entire quest, his whole story throughout the year, was to obtain this revenge against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 to finally become champion for the first time and to dethrone Roman Reigns and his legendary reign. Except that The Rock arrived at the beginning of 2024 and thought, and he was not the only one thinking this, it's important to specify, basically, we found what to do with Roman Reigns against The Rock, rather, at WrestleMania 40 in the main event was a better idea. In terms of business, in terms of, let's say, media exposure, there were arguments in favor, and that's why The Rock, we can say, inserted himself. Yes, we can say that anyway. One can also insert themselves with the agreement of others, but the fact is that he inserted himself in the middle of all this, and that we were initially set for The Rock against Roman Reigns, but it provoked a lot of reactions, a lot of anger from fans, especially Cody Rhodes' fans, who felt that this main event against Roman Reigns should have belonged to Cody Rhodes and not to The Rock. As a result, a large portion of the fans turned against The Rock. In any case, those we heard a lot about on social media with the hashtag #WeWantCody, in short, that's the context. And so, seeing all this, The Rock, who is an intelligent person and whose philosophy has always been to listen to the audience, must be understood. The Rock is not a novice in wrestling. He was part of the Attitude Era, the glorious era of wrestling in the late 90s and early 2000s, and he is one of the most well-known and famous wrestlers, who also succeeded the best in Hollywood as an actor right after, and who was, during the Attitude Era, he was one of the two biggest stars of WWE, exceptional popularity. And it should be noted that he had already had a journey where he started as a babyface, that is to say, as a good guy, but it was only from the moment he was made to do a heel turn that suited him better, basically playing a villain character, that he was much more natural and much better, that he was really propelled to success because he had charisma and aura and eloquence. He was extraordinary. And it's funny because we had a bit of the same thing in 2024. But we'll come back to that. It's all very interesting, so hold on tight. So, in this situation, The Rock had a choice. Whether we continue or not, we don't care what some fans think, even if they reject it, even if they chant, Rock sucks, Rock sucks. It doesn't matter. We are still doing Roman Reigns against The Rock, with Roman Reigns being a heel character, essentially the chief of the tribe. He is supposed to be, well, even though in reality, I find that he is neither one nor the other. It's the tribal chief. He is above everything. He is neither really good nor really bad, even though he still has some heel tactics in his matches, at least for a long time. The idea was basically to have Roman Reigns as the heel and The Rock as the face. That was the plan that could have happened. However, at that moment, The Rock decided not to force the plan. He wanted to implement and instead chose to become a heel. Basically, he stopped being the character, so he was very little of it in the end. Moreover, I also want to clarify that, and this is to show you as well, that I am also clear-headed and objective in this situation. Despite my fandom for The Rock, I completely acknowledge that I don't like The Rock as a babyface at all. For example, I find that when he appeared, it was in the fall of 2023, and it wasn't yet the road to WrestleMania 40, obviously. When he showed up at that time and had a segment with Austin Theory on SmackDown, I thought it was incredibly heavy-handed. It was terrible. It didn't make me laugh. And I felt it all sounded very scripted. So, I don't know if it was the same for you, but for me, this segment was pointless. It served no purpose other than the pleasure of seeing The Rock back in WWE. But that's it. We were heading towards that initially, if the fans hadn't rejected The Rock in their love for Cody Rhodes. And so, The Rock at that moment decides to instead make a heel turn, become a heel, and take on the character of the final boss, which is a new version of The Rock, who he has already been in the past. He was, of course, the Rock of the Nation of Domination. That was at the very beginning then. At one point, he even became a Hollywood version, Hollywood Rock, where it was simply him who had started to build a career in Hollywood and who plays the villain, basically the guy who thinks he's a star from Hollywood, all that. He was very, very good too. And there we had yet another version. It was the final boss. So there you have the context. I think everything is clear. The Rock arrives and sees that what he had planned isn't working. He decides not to stay face, chooses not to have the match against Roman Reigns, and instead becomes the final boss, while still returning to Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes too. But in all of this, he will have a special role, and we will come back to that. Nevertheless, it hasn't stopped him, in my opinion, from shining brightly during this road to WrestleMania 40, and I'm not afraid to say it, I think the final boss saved the road to WrestleMania 40 for multiple reasons, and we will revisit that in detail. So, I have to say that, of course, I think it was a very good idea and a very good decision to make the heel turn. Indeed, if he had remained the face and they had continued with a Roman Reigns versus The Rock match at that precise moment, in that context, with Cody Rhodes on his quest and very popular among fans, there was a legitimate anger that could be heard from the fans. It's true that one only needs to put themselves in the shoes of fans who have loved and supported Cody Rhodes for an entire year and who are waiting for just one thing, to see him. Having your second chance at WrestleMania 40 and seeing it slip away almost at the 11th hour, basically at the last second, is enough to make anyone angry. That can be understood. Especially since they had really led us to believe, teased that we were going to have Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes 2 for months. And so, I think it was a very good decision. He was able to adapt to the fans. And that is the hallmark of great performers and people who truly understand sports entertainment. On the contrary, in other times, we can base ourselves, for example, on what happened on the road to WrestleMania 30, exactly 10 years earlier, when Batista returned. And Batista, he too, by the way, had started to make a career in Hollywood, although not at all on the same scale as The Rock, but still. And he had basically come to take the spotlight away from Daniel Bryan that year, who was the fans' favorite, at least among some fans, particularly those who are very vocal on social media. And he had essentially taken his place in the eyes of many to make Randy Orton versus Batista the main event of WrestleMania 30. And at that time, they made the mistake of staying in that position for too long with a Batista who remained a babyface. Basically, they did that for several weeks back then. Now, The Rock, having barely noticed the hashtag We Want Cody, immediately realized in the following days that there would be Roman Reigns against The Rock, and he quickly knew how to adapt and make the heel turn right at the press conference just after, where he delivers the famous slap to Cody Rhodes, and where we understand that he is no longer the babyface. I take this opportunity to criticize him, by the way. I don't like The Rock as a babyface. I find that The Rock as a babyface, purely the character, is someone who seeks attention far too much. Not just attention, especially the validation of fans who try too hard to be liked, or everything sounds very scripted. By the way, I have in mind, even though I enjoyed this rivalry, especially its originality of being built over such a long time, the one I'm talking about is, of course, between The Rock and John Cena, particularly the first match they had at WrestleMania 28. I must say I remember that promo where he had notes on his wrist, and you could feel that basically those punchlines or those little phrases that are supposed to be, at least, be pleasant for the fans, at least, for the fans to like those punchlines, you could feel that everything was basically calculated. In fact, I couldn't summarize this The Rock babyface better than to say that he is someone who is very, let's say, calculating, who pays a lot of attention to being liked, to his image, also because he is an actor in Hollywood, and he especially wouldn't want to have bad press and a negative reputation among some, because we know that for celebrities, and even more so for actors in Hollywood, for many reasons, it's important for them to remain popular with the general public, and this version of The Rock, I don't like. So, it's certain that if he had remained a babyface, I wouldn't have this crush. But he became final boss, and what was so great about the final boss, in my opinion, what I loved right away, is one of the first things we saw, of course. He made a return with extraordinary outfits, electrifying outfits, as he would say. What was that outfit really? He brought back what he hadn't done since the Attitude Era, after all. Versace shirts, amazing looks. So, it could have been a long-sleeved shirt but also sleeveless at all. And it was also superb outfits, the sunglasses of course. Basically, he returned to outfits that represented his greatness, which embodied all his charisma during his prime. So I was the biggest fan of that. I have to admit that. I love The Rock from the Attitude Era, but of course the Hill version of The Rock. And I am specifically targeting the period, let's say, 98-2001. This is really the golden age of The Rock in WWE. And yet, he wasn't there the whole time during that period. It was a turning point along the way because, being him, he was still loved. Because he was so great and so comfortable and charismatic with his punchlines, the phrases that everyone knows. And so, he winked at all of that and I loved it. But also in terms of production, what we quickly noticed is that while he started with his most famous theme song, he later returned to the Hollywood theme song. A slower, more serious version of his music, which I personally love. And I think, what care and effort there has been both in his look, in the music, and in the Titantron. The staging, from a lighting perspective and everything we saw on the screens at the moment of his entrance, the work that went into it was impressive. Impressive. Whether you like The Rock or not, we really should. In any case, we can only have the honesty and clarity to see. The entrances of The Rock during the road to WrestleMania 40 were remarkable, as he would suddenly appear as if he had teleported with a lightning bolt above him, illuminated, alone, with the screen filled with lightning, and it seemed like there was smoke around him. It was truly a well-crafted staging for his entrance, and that deserves recognition. I am a fanatic, really, of everything related to production, staging, entrances, all that. I love it. For me, that's where we cheer the loudest for a superstar, especially if they are charismatic and shine like The Rock. And he was definitely that. His entrances were all amazing. It was truly a delight to discover the small evolution of his entrance week by week. There were little details that were adjusted. And the Tim song also adapted. Overall, he managed to evolve the character over time as well, improving it week by week. And for that, we can only applaud. I loved it. It was a big favorite for me. Big crush on all the styling and identity of the final boss. But what is the final boss exactly? These are unforgettable moments. This is the main reason for my love for the final boss. Clearly, the best scenes born on the road to WrestleMania 40 were with The Rock. What do I remember, for example? Which scenes am I talking about in particular? Hold on tight, of course, there is the press conference. An electric atmosphere, an unpredictable scenario. At the beginning of the press conference, for example, I knew for the first time in a very long time at WWE, not at all what to expect. And let us have the courage to say that if The Rock had not been at this press conference, we knew it would have been Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes too. And there you go. And honestly, I found that purely from a creative standpoint, the writing by WWE's Triple H around Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes too was very repetitive compared to the previous year. Nothing really new. In fact, the press conference is the perfect illustration of this. You have The Rock's presence and you don't know what is going to happen. I remember following the press conference, which I loved by the way, because there was the song Gasoline, the theme song for WrestleMania 40, which fit perfectly and was amazing by the weekend. There was really an electric atmosphere because you were thinking, what are they going to do? We were expecting a Roman Reigns versus The Rock match, but in the end, no, you have Cody at the end, The Rock, who suddenly doesn't hesitate to criticize the fans and behaves like
A heel.
And you say to yourself, damn, this is no longer a babyface. And all of this was unpredictable. It's great. And all this excitement is thanks to the presence of The Rock. It's true. In this case, it's the pure truth. Without him, the press conference it probably wouldn't have even taken place because there was nothing special or new to announce. It was just Roman against Cody Rhodes too, you know. Except that here, the way it was presented with a twist, Cody changing his mind, The Rock slap, Cody who provoked The Rock? In any case, in The Rock's eyes, at that moment, The Rock was leaving with Roman Reigns, who was very angry when we saw him pass by Triple H during the interview. There was an electricity in the air. It was exceptional. And so, among the scenes that I highlight, which have been great on this road to WrestleMania 40, in which The Rock is fully involved, there is the press conference, but not just that. Not just that, obviously. There is also, we remember The Rock's concert at SmackDown, and what a genius that was. What a great idea. What creativity, finally, at WWE, to pay homage to what he did in his prime. Because yes, The Rock had already performed concerts at WWE, and what a great idea to do it again, especially since it was really funny, I think. He was good, and there was truly a special atmosphere. Even purely the concert, there was a lightness, and it was funny. It was simply entertaining. So, that was a striking scene. It was great. But also, I find that the moment right after when he was cutting a promo, looking directly into the camera, specifically at Mama Rhodes, Cody Rhodes' mother, was intense. It was personal. It was fantastic. It was exactly what needed to be brought to this road to WrestleMania 40 and The Rock in terms of promo regarding Mama Rhodes. And of course, when I think of promos, I immediately think of what may have been the best part of this road to WrestleMania 40. I am of course talking about The Rock's comments on Instagram. Because yes, unlike other superstars who should really take a page from his book, he even made others experience. Well, others have done it, others have already done it, but for him, it was just completely, I don't know, I put the phone down, I think someone was filming it instead, and during for about 10 minutes, he was doing a wrestling promo, but in a setting. For example, there was a scene where he had a cowboy hat on, and he was in some sort of rodeo arena, because at that moment it was fitting, let's say. But there had also been in the gym. And at one point, a somewhat random place where That was the very first time I remember he explained all the context, all the story surrounding the situation. And here's another thing I loved about The Rock. He is aware that there are people watching who didn't know about wrestling, who didn't understand the references, who basically didn't get why certain things were exciting or good. And those who are more attentive will have noticed that every time The Rock spoke on this road to WrestleMania 40, he always explained the context in which he said what he said. He explained all the stakes. Sometimes he also explained it in words that everyone could understand. And I find that to be mega important. He explained it well. And it was important, very important to do that. In short, the promos he made on Instagram were great, especially since they were politically incorrect. Well, this also got some of his colleagues talking because The Rock was taking liberties that were not given to others. Well, even though Cody Rhodes finally had a bit more freedom in a promo he did on Raw, we have to acknowledge that. But it's true that, well, the fact that The Rock can be himself, can be free-spirited without limits, helps us believe in him and allows him to fully embrace his character. It's true, when you suddenly saw him drop vulgar or politically incorrect words, it was a huge change, it was refreshing. It had been years since we had seen that. We may not have seen it at all. Some things that The Rock said didn't go that far. And so, I think to myself, what a breath of fresh air. What freedom. And how cool it was to have something completely unpredictable, including what he was going to say. You would say, even when he was doing promos on SmackDown, and not just that, he was also on Raw, you had no idea what he was going to say. It was amazing. Anyway, you get it. His promos were amazing. The press conference was great. The concert was awesome. The fact that he has no limits. The fact that he is completely unpredictable. And of course, he remains The Rock. The Rock is a presence. He has an aura. He has charisma. Moreover, I would even go so far as to say, and this shows you how objective I am in this situation, that I, as you know, the residents of the channel know, I love Roman Reigns. I would even go so far as to say that The Rock completely overshadowed Roman Reigns in almost every area on this road to WrestleMania 40. And I say this as a fan of Roman Reigns. It's true, when you saw them side by side, you saw basically a The Rock who was broad, massive, tall, muscular, fully invested, intense, who even had goosebumps, he showed it, who was really but totally inhabited. Through the storyline and the situation, while you saw a Roman Reigns who was coming, well, even though there were moments when he was still intense, fortunately, we got to see a great Roman Reigns again. But overall, I still find it a bit uneven. Roman, purely the road. I'm not talking about WrestleMania 40, the match itself, where I found Roman Reigns great. But purely in terms of the build-up, I found that The Rock was clearly above Roman, and more impressively, on another level than all the others, and this must be acknowledged, is also what made for me the great strength of The Rock, which is that it's clear that in terms of charisma, intensity, and his promos, he was on another level as a final boss than all the others. And he was also on another level in one particular scene, which for me, I'm not afraid to say, is the best scene I've seen in WWE, honestly. For more than 10 years. So just for that scene, I want to say, I love the final boss, because what did it do? It had probably been a very, very, very long time since I was used to WWE being less unpredictable or less exciting. And suddenly, having a scene that is the best in years is a blessing. And I am, of course, talking about the parking lot scene. Basically, we were at the end of a row, and another thing worth mentioning for the final boss in this fondness for him is that he made a surprise appearance. While other appearances were scheduled, it was known that he would have his segment on SmackDown in the last show before WrestleMania as well. But this one, which was in Chicago, was unexpected. He appeared as a surprise at the beginning. In an entrance that I find extraordinary in terms of aura, it really felt like he was coming from a time-space portal. Suddenly, he appeared and whispered something in Cody Rhodes' ear, which we later learned was, "I'm gonna make you bleed." Later in the show, at the very end, in the last scene of the show, Cody Rhodes gets attacked, so it was a bit of general chaos, but The Rock is still there and attacks Cody Rhodes, and then we have a scene that is mind-blowing. where you see him grab him, drag him, take him to a parking lot while hitting him with a trash can, throwing him against walls. He takes him to the parking lot, outside, and there is rain, it is night, there is Cody Rhodes' bus, but also a production truck from WWE, where we could see the faces of John Cena and Stone Cold Steve Austin, which was not a coincidence after all. At that moment we wondered if it was a coincidence. But WrestleMania 40 showed that it was not the case, as we know that, unfortunately, it was The Undertaker who intervened, and John Cena also intervened, but originally it was supposed to be Stone Cold, which unfortunately did not happen. I would have preferred that. As you can understand, I love the final boss for all these reasons, and I hope this video has allowed those of you who perhaps weren't really excited about the final boss and his character to appreciate him a little more during this journey to WrestleMania 40. That would make me very happy.
We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?